you ready?
Hello and welcome once again to Hotty, Toddy, Hotline, the weekly show about Ole Miss Rebel athletics. I'm your executive producer, John Rawl, and once again with you this week, I'm joined again by Matt Heermans of CRM Sports. And on this week's show, Matt, we're going to talk about Ole Miss baseball in great detail. The Rebels with a series sweep over the Kentucky Wildcats. And it was an exciting weekend in Oxford. You had graduation weekend going down, which is the reason Michael Snowden and Browning Stubbs aren't with us this week as we're wrapping things up. Next week's show actually will be our final Hotty Toddy Hotline of the 2015-2016 school year. So hopefully you can manage the next 3 months without a little HTH with you each and every week. But Matt, what an exciting finale to the three-game series with Kentucky with a walk-off win.
Doesn't get much better than that, does it?
No, it does not. And it was exciting. We'll tell you all about it. We hope to be joined by Michael Snowden, although he's not here in the flesh with us currently. He's going to try to check in with us and give us his thoughts on Ole Miss baseball. Looking good and almost sewing up, if they haven't already, the ability to host postseason play at Swayze Field. So we'll lay it all out with you on the baseball front and get to some football talk as well as we're high atop the Bluff City once again. This is Hotty Toddy Hotline.
Hey, Rebels, your truck is here. Allen Samuels Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram in Oxford presents the all-new Ram Rebel. It's Ram, the Rebel way. Send an unmistakable signal. Rebel, 24/7. Ram Rebel, from your friend in the car business. Allen Samuels Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram in Oxford.
Come by, let's be friends.
We're back at Hotty Toddy Hotline, presented by Charter Road Hospitality in Oxford. Now that graduation has come and gone in Oxford, you've got the ability to book your reservation for most every weekend coming up on the calendar. I think some of the football game weekends are a little bit busy, like Georgia, for example. But overall, a great opportunity for you to come to Lafayette County now that the kiddies are gone for a few months. Charter Road Hospitality with the properties both on the east and west side of town. They've got the Hampton Inn east and west, the east by the Conference Center, the west just behind Abner's off Jackson Avenue. You also have the Holiday Inn Express behind the Hampton Inn off of West Jackson Avenue. And then you have the Town Place Suites by Marriott by the Convention Center. So some wonderful options for you if you want to book your next stay in Oxford. Check it out, Charter Road Hospitality. They're our host sponsor of this Hotty Toddy Hotline. I'm John Rawl, joined by Matt Heermans, our CRM Sports football, baseball, and all-around good guy insider. And we're talking Ole Miss baseball. The Rebels get a series sweep over UK this past weekend. Kentucky was coming into Oxford after defeating a very good South Carolina ball club the previous weekend in Lexington, and then they come south to Mississippi, and a team they haven't played in a few years on the baseball diamond. And Coach Henderson's team was riding high, you could say, but the Ole Miss Rebels shut them down pretty quickly, especially with Game 1, which was actually played on Thursday night of last week.
3-1 contest in that game. You like what you see there. As you said a minute ago, Kentucky was coming off a real strong series against South Carolina, and they just couldn't get the bats going at all against the Ole Miss pitching staff. So you like to start off a 3-1 game. That just shows kind of the strength of the bullpen at that point. But good way to start. Of course, you move into Game 2, which is just a complete dominating performance by Ole Miss, 14-2.
The bats come alive naturally there with that convincing win, and so you get the win there. It's a series win already after Friday. And, again, graduation weekend coming up. You had players who this was a big weekend, not just because of baseball, but because their lives were going to forever change as a result of getting the important degree from the University of Mississippi. And families coming in, a lot of distractions, and the Rebels able to take care of business on that Thursday and Friday. And then we get to Saturday, which did not look to be a very good game for Ole Miss for 8.5 innings, but that's why they play 9 innings.
That's right. That's why they play 9 innings. In 5-0 ball game, You start to think when you're watching that game, kind of think, well, man, this weekend's kind of caught up to him. It is graduation weekend. There are a lot of faces in the crowd. There's a lot of family members and just out of gas, but didn't turn out that way, as we all saw.
Well, in case you didn't see it, it was a game, again, that Ole Miss got behind. They just found ways to inch back throughout the later innings of the game. And then in the bottom of the ninth, trailing by 1 run, I believe the young man is from South Haven, Mississippi.
South Haven, Mississippi. Henry Lartigue, Henri. Piece of trivia.
All right.
The French spelling.
All right. Bonjour. And the South Haven Charger, I assume he went there to that high school, comes through in the clutch for Ole Miss and has the walk-off home run with a shot to right field. It didn't have a whole lot of gas on it, but just enough to get over that field. And
just enough that everybody knew it. When it started getting out there, he knew it, and the bullpen knew it, and they were out on the field, and you complete the sweep of Kentucky in storybook fashion.
Yeah. And this was an exciting game from a home run standpoint because earlier in the game, although trailing, Ole Miss actually had 2 batters come to the plate and hit back-to-back home runs. One actually had to go kind of down toward the plate and lift it out of left field, and that was a really cool thing to see, and the fans really were excited about that one.
That's right, and J.B. Woodman is one of those guys that hit one of the solo bombs, and he's hit 7 home runs in the last 9 games.
Wow, on a tear.
He's a grown man,
and,
as they say.
And, if you're going to have a tear and be a grown man, come mid-May and late May and early June, that is the time to do it in college baseball.
It's always true, but it's incredibly true right now.
What you did in February, although important, is not as important as what's happening now because, as we talked about earlier in the show, this is a time of year where bids are going out for hosting, and we already know Mississippi State has submitted a package to the NCAA. I think Ole Miss is right there. If they haven't already submitted it, it's looking real good. This is a team that, even if they lose the series at College Station this weekend, their resume is pretty strong. They are one of the top 10 teams or so in the country. This sweep this past weekend only helps their case of a team that's trending upward. And the SEC overall looking pretty good as a conference.
Looking real good. ACC being the top RPI conference right now, right behind it the SEC is in the Big 12. So those are the 3 best conferences right now.
And we're going to talk about some of the other conferences before we get out of here this week. Matt is a guy that looks around the country at the various conferences. We know the ACC is strong. They have the defending national champion Virginia Cavaliers, a team that eliminated Ole Miss in Omaha 2 years ago. But we're seeing some action out of the Big 12. They actually have a new Big 12 regular season team, a team that has not won that crown in roughly 20 years. So we'll talk about that later in the show. You'll want to hear about maybe some likely destinations for super regionals, and a trip out to a long way away from Oxford is a possibility if Ole Miss doesn't become a super regional host of their own. But all in all, Coach Bianco, his team, especially in that Saturday game, the finale of the 3-game series with Kentucky, didn't give up. They could have easily cashed their chips in and walked away because they won the series, and it just shows a lot of the grit and determination of Coach Bianco's team.
It really does, and it also shows an awareness of how much the series means and how much each game means at this point, because there's that cluster at the top of the SEC West that even gets closer and tighter after this weekend now.
And LSU has been winning a lot lately. We'll talk about that also from a conference perspective. A lot of college baseball in the air in North Mississippi. We'll take a timeout. When we come back, we hope to be joined by Michael Snowden, the host of this show, as he wasn't able to be here, as we said, in person, but we hope to be able to get him on the phone at least and get his perspective on the surging Ole Miss baseball team. And we still got football to talk about as we roll on with this week's show. So stick with us. This is Hotty Toddy Hotline from CRM Sports. And welcome back into Hotty Toddy Hotline on the Colonel Reb Network. I'm John Rawl, executive producer, joined by Matt Heermans of CRM Sports. And we have our usual host of the show, Michael Snowden, on the phone on the other side of Oxford. Michael, welcome into the show.
Hey, John, how's it going?
It's going good. We wish you were here, but we understand you have an excused absence this week, so enjoy your week away from the studio of Charter Road Hospitality. But, hey, Matt and I in the first segment talked about Ole Miss baseball and the Rebels looking real good this past weekend with a series sweep over the Kentucky Wildcats, and now getting ready to go down to College Station for a SEC series, the last series of the season against the Texas A&M Aggies. Your thoughts on what happened this past weekend in Oxford?
Well, I think it was impressive. I mean, when you look at what happened, I mean, you're checking out final series scores of 3-1, 14-2, and, of course, that unbelievable 7-5 ending on graduation day. Solid series all the way around, especially Game 2. I mean, you're looking at a 14-2 margin. Very impressive. Also a good way to finish up the final homestand of the season at Swayze, and a good feeling going into your last major series. But looking back, it's just unbelievable, especially that third game where they just, they closed the deal and managed to get that 3-run homer to end it all. And it was just a really special weekend in Oxford for everything to go along with it.
Yeah, and like we said earlier in the show, this was the third game that Ole Miss could have easily walked away and said, we don't really have to have this, no biggie. But they had the determination to come out and actually win the ball game. In your opinion, does that kind of give us a little glimpse of what's ahead for this team in the postseason?
Well, I certainly think so, because when you look at it, I mean, as you said, the team could have quit on it, but they didn't. And I think this team, from the get-go, a lot of people weren't, they thought they were going to be good. They didn't really think they had that spirit in them really to get going. And the season, when you're looking back, really started off well. They were starting with some serious swagger, winning some great games, knocking off Louisville, and that home series was absolutely pivotal as well. But, when you see a lot of things people will say is, fatigue and just boredom when the end of the regular season comes around. And, and Kentucky's one of those teams, that'll come in and can get that kind of stealing win. And them to, be able to just hold on and take all three games. Obviously, the last one was one of those ones where, luck had to go your way with a little bit of skill as well. A lot of skill, but also some luck in there as well. But, I think it's a good look for the postseason. Obviously, we still got one more road series against Texas A&M. But, I think Ole Miss, with the heart they've got and enough skill, I think they can go toe-to-toe with most colleges in this country when it comes to the time on the road to Omaha.
Hey, this is Matt Heermans. Michael, how are you?
Hi, Matt. I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. I'm filling in as well as I can for you those last couple of days.
Yeah, well, hopefully you're doing well. I appreciate it.
I'm giving it a shot. Tell me.
He's giving you a run for the money.
Tell me this.
Well,
tell me this. How do you think Ole Miss and Texas A&M match up this next weekend in College Station?
Well, when you look at it, it's a tough one. Texas A&M is a very, very solid team all the way around. Top 5 in the nation, regardless. Top 5 in the nation all the way around, and it's going to be it's going to be a tough matchup, no doubt. And I think A&M is going to have some offensive firepower that the Ole Miss pitching is going to have to really, really try and work with. Obviously you got that little middle game before A&M with Arkansas State. You kind of want to win that one. But as far as, Texas A&M goes, they're going to have home field advantage. Going to be a very rowdy crowd, I would believe. School's finally over, so people can just enjoy the games. I think, if Ole Miss could take this series from A&M, I think that would be some serious motivation going forward into the SEC postseason.
Right, and possibly even win the West at this point.
Yeah, they got the West on the I don't know mathematically if they can win the West, but even if you can't, you want to think that you can.
Well, you're one game behind Texas A&M, right? Actually,
okay.
You're half. Depending on what happens today, we're taping. Texas A&M is playing South Carolina, so we'll see what happens there. But you're either one game behind or you're half a game behind, depending on what happens today. And then Mississippi State, you're a game behind them as well. So it's not completely in your hands if you're Ole Miss, but this next weekend is huge. It's as big as it gets. Yeah.
And Texas A&M, of course, they've had a really good run this year, and I think they've been a team on the rise the last few years. I remember Texas A&M actually hosted Ole Miss in a regional in College Station the year before they joined the SEC. So it was their last season in the Big 12 before jumping to the SEC, and Ole Miss lost that series in College Station, that regional, I should say, against the teams they played out there at that time. But going to be some interesting games at Bluebell Park. there on the campus of Texas A&M, and Ole Miss fans will have their eyes glued to see what happens over there with Mike Bianco's team. I want to ask you, Michael, while we have, I saw Wyatt Short, pitcher for Ole Miss. He got a lot of face time in the series this weekend, and then the other pitching that Ole Miss came through. When you win a game like you saw on Friday, 14-2, the pitching is certainly something that it seems to be peaking at just the right time. Your thoughts on pitching?
Well, I mean, that's absolutely typical when you're looking at Wyatt and all the other great pitchers. They've been, good pitchers have been playing well lately. It's important to have that going forward, because if your pitcher is not playing well, you're going to have some serious problems trying to even fight back from a deficit in general. So, I mean, the pitching, I think, along with trying to get those main base hits and all that, I think it's going to be very pivotal. It looks promising as of right now. And SEC obviously a solid conference to pitch in. This team has won some good series this season. They're an experienced team. I think the way with this pivot, the pitching has been going lately, and all the way around, I think it's going to be a very, very good outlook coming up here for the Rebels, and hopefully they can keep it up.
And on the pitching front, through the years, Mike Bianco has faced criticism from fans and some media members for the way he's treated pitchers throughout the season. Some would say that he overworked his pitching staff. He had too many pitch counts for the pitchers on his roster, and you saw players just really evaporate when it mattered most. Do you think he's kind of learned from that this year and maybe the last few years?
Well, most likely so. I think they've learned from it pretty well. Obviously these guys aren't robots. They can't always go out there. They can't obviously go out there and try to, pitch 200 innings. Nobody can do that, but exaggeration. But, seeing what they've got, being able to rest the guys, I think, that's obviously important here, especially down the stretch run. I think he's learned from it, and I think it's going to turn out pretty well here for the Ole Miss pitching. I think it's obviously shown how well pitching as well.
Michael, how good has J.B. Woodman been the last couple months?
He's been absolutely fantastic as of lately. I mean, it's been impressive to watch. Kind of everybody's been playing well. The chemistry has really been sinking. I mean, you look at his stats. It's been really, really fun to watch. Thank you. It's been really fun to watch, and hopefully they keep it going throughout the rest of the postseason here coming up.
Well, the pitching, of course, is key, but you got to hit the ball. And we've seen streaks where Ole Miss is on fire. I believe Dan Patrick would say in fuego or something like that. But, yeah, so it's going to be a key thing with a big series against Texas A&M. And we could find ourselves next week on our finale for Hotty Toddy Hotline of the Year talking about a team that actually won the SEC West. And this is arguably the best conference in college baseball, but I don't think there's any doubt. This is the best division in college baseball, the SEC West.
Absolutely. And
if Ole Miss somehow prevails, as they have a very good shot of doing if they play good ball down in College Station, what a great statement for a team that many maybe overlooked going into this season. And Mike Bianco has done a fantastic job. Before we sign off with you, Michael, any other baseball thoughts before we let you get back to what you're doing?
I hope they can continue what they've been doing. This team obviously 2 years ago made that great run into Omaha. This team seems to have that kind of motivation, that kind of swagger, and those kind of dreams. A lot of it depends on the teams in front of them, and obviously that's going to be a major factor going forward. But it should be interesting to see what happens. And I think if the pitching continues this way, and you get your offense that you need from your main guys, I think everything should go well for Ole Miss.
And what is your attitude, real quickly, about the SEC tournament? Is that something that's a very important aspect of this team, or can they maybe not put so much worry into that one, seeing that they're probably going to maybe even host a regional?
Well, I don't think you want to flatline the SEC tournament. Obviously, if you go in, you want to be able to do – I think you want to be able to do the absolute best you can in trying to, obviously be decent enough at what you're doing to make the team go forward. If they play well in the SEC tournament, I think that'll be a really, really good motivation factor. Again, as you said, SEC West division being one of the better ones in college baseball. I think it'll be a great start off for the team. And they do well. Hopefully they can use that as motivation and going forward.
All right. Well, in the Magnolia State, some may think MS means Mississippi. I don't think so. It stands for Michael Snowden. Michael, great job on Hotty Toddy Hotline this week, and we look to see you on our finale next week.
All right, thank you.
All right. Good job there. When we come back, we'll continue talking a little baseball, but we got a lot of football to get to as well. This is Hotty Toddy Hotline on the Colonel Reb Network.
Because you want more flavor, at Nuke's we marinate and grill to perfection. Because you want the latest culinary tastes and trends, we never rest. At Nuke's, great food drives us. So we are meticulous in our preparation, obsessed with the quality of our ingredients, and uncompromising about serving you our very best. We believe that sharing a memorable meal is one of life's ultimate pleasures. Join us at Nuke's Eatery.
From the Charter Road Hospitality Studios, this is Hotty Toddy Hotline. College baseball is in the air big time. I'm John Rawl with Matt Heermans of CRM Sports. And Ole Miss swept Kentucky this past weekend, hitting the road to the Lone Star State this weekend. And we've talked a lot about the Rebels, but let's look around the SEC and the rest of college baseball, because it is crunch time for those who love this sport. And we've got the conference tournament next week, and then just after that, you'll have the regionals followed by the super regionals. Lots of fun if you love the sport of baseball. And in the SEC, we've got a little bit of a roadblock here at the top of the SEC West standings. We talked earlier about Ole Miss and Texas A&M facing off this weekend, and the conference championship for the West, at least, on the line there. But Mississippi State also has something to say that. Matt, if you don't mind, share with us the standings of the West in particular and who actually has a shot this weekend.
Okay, so what you've got is a 4-program kind of a block at the top. You've got Texas A&M, you've got Mississippi State. They're both 18-9 in the conference. Those series are done. Got Ole Miss 17-10, LSU at 17-10. Those are the top 4. You got Alabama a couple of games behind at 15-12. It would take some type of ridiculous miracle for them to make it in. I don't even think it's possible. However, each one of those 4 teams, to a certain extent, specifically A&M and Mississippi State, they hold their destiny in their hands. So Ole Miss and LSU are only 1 game behind Texas A&M and Mississippi State, and the key to look at there is that Ole Miss plays Texas A&M next week. So 1 win, you're even. 2 wins, you're ahead. 3 wins, of course, you've got a cushion on Texas A&M. So you can finish ahead of them if you win the series, period. And Mississippi State's got another series as well, so they've got they're going to kind of determine where the pecking order is going to be as far as they go. But what you've got is 2 teams right there, a game behind the 2 top teams, and you've got 3-game series coming up. So it's about as close as you can get for those 4 teams, John.
And I remember Mississippi State actually went down to Alex Box Stadium 6 weeks or so ago and won the series against LSU, and that may come into play head-to-head matchups now.
Absolutely, yeah. If it comes down to, obviously you're going to have a head-to-head situation between Ole Miss and A&M. Something's going to be worked out there. But, yeah, if it comes down to LSU and Mississippi State having the same conference record, you're going to start going down the checklist on how you get who finishes above who.
And of course, Mike Bianco has won the West many times. And I think it was in baseball just a few years ago, they actually got rid of the divisions. There was no division, and now they brought it back. It could have been only in basketball, but I think maybe baseball too. Of course, when they added 2 more teams, that really made it almost impossible to win the conference with 13 other teams you're competing against. So maybe they give you the little small trophy for winning your division now with the college baseball side of things. But
another thing I wanted to bring up earlier, John.
Yes, sir.
So much good news for Ole Miss baseball. Good news all over the place. Another piece of good news is that Ole Miss just set a single-season attendance record at Swayze Field this year. So the fan base is strong. It's just more good news for Ole Miss baseball.
Yeah, if you saw the television broadcast of Saturday's game against Kentucky, they made the point that the seniors at Ole Miss had played in front of millions of fans. Yes, they gave a number I should have been paying a little bit closer attention. By the way, great job by David DeLucci, former Ole Miss Rebel baseball star who went on to play many years in Major League Baseball, won a world championship with the Arizona Diamondbacks, may have won one with the Yankees too, I'm not sure, played for the Texas Rangers. He's the color analyst on some of the ESPN Plus games that Ole Miss does. I'm going to reach out to him this week. We hope to have David DeLucci on our final show of the year next week. So fingers crossed DeLucci will come on and share us his thoughts, because he's been able to see Ole Miss in person more than once this year, so we're excited about that. But I believe DeLucci was the one bragging about the attendance of Ole Miss baseball. And here's a guy that 20 years ago was playing in Oxford, and they didn't have the crowds like they did. I mean, it was a fun place to go, and of course the kids were in the outfield with their coolers and such back in those days. But
it's never been better.
But that was before Bianco came, and honestly, Bianco and I both arrived in Oxford right around 2001. And to me, not being in Oxford in the 90s or the 80s, Ole Miss baseball has been a killer sport. I mean, it really has been the second best sport from an attendance standpoint and from an interest standpoint in Oxford. And it only gets better when you have a season like this, a season that many, like I said earlier, may not have seen coming, but the players are peaking and things are good. So we know there's going to be some competition into this final weekend of baseball play on the West. What about the East? What's going on over there between Florida, South Carolina, and any other pretenders?
Well, the East is essentially Florida and South Carolina, John. Florida's the number one team in the country right now. Vanderbilt took a loss.
I believe they lost their series to Florida this past weekend.
They did. But Florida's the number one team in the country. They're sitting there. They're not going to go anywhere. South Carolina just beat Texas A&M. They're sitting at 17-9 in the conference. That's another strong program. After that, you've got Vanderbilt at 15-12. That's a solid program. That's probably a postseason program. But then you've got a drop-off after that. So it's not as strong as the West. You've got two really, really good teams. You've got a pretty good team in Vanderbilt. And then you've got a sub-500 conference team in Kentucky who has played well, but it's just it's not like the West.
Well, Kentucky and the Georgias of the world probably aren't even going to make it to postseason.
No. I would – Kentucky, I can't imagine them. They're 13-14 in conference right now, 29-23. They haven't even hit the 30-game mark yet. I can't see Kentucky making it to the postseason right now.
Okay, well, tough luck for them, especially after like Saturday's game where they lost a heartbreaker for their sake to Ole Miss on a walk-off home run.
They needed to maybe not win the series, but they needed to at least win one to keep any type of hope alive, I think.
Yeah, that may have really cost them there in Lexington. All right, let's take a quick look around other college baseball conferences, and I'm going to start in Lubbock, Texas, a place that you have called home at least once in your life. The Texas Tech Red Raiders just claimed the Big 12 regular season title for the first time since
1998.
Okay. Tell me what's going on with the Red Raiders.
Well, they've had a heck of a season. The interesting thing about this weekend is that Texas Tech clinched the conference outright championship on a bye week. So they had enough of a lead where they needed Oklahoma State to lose 2 games of the Bedlam series, which of course is Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. And Oklahoma pulled it out. They won 2 games. TCU lost 2 games. So that cleared the path. The conference race is over with another series to play next weekend. Tournament's coming up, but Tech's just got a killer lineup. They've been able to – the bats, similar to Ole Miss in a lot of ways, the bats have just exploded this year for Ole Miss and for Texas Tech, pardon me. But the freshman pitching for the Red Raiders has just been amazing. Davis Martin, Stephen Gingery, these are true freshmen who've come out and posted sub-2 ERAs in the Big 12 Conference this year.
And Tech actually got to the College World Series 2 years ago, and what team eliminated them from Omaha?
That would be the Ole Miss Rebels. So
Ole Miss and Texas Tech have faced off in recent years in the biggest stage there is in Omaha, Nebraska. Any other teams we need to know about in the Big 12?
Absolutely, yeah. The Big 12 it's not as strong as the SEC or the ACC. Of course, there are less programs, but Texas Tech is, of course, a strong program. They got the offense and the pitching staff, especially the bullpen. But another team is TCU. They've struggled a little bit lately, but this has been a top 10 team the whole year. In fact, it's been a top 5 team for a lot of the year. They've struggled a little bit down the stretch, but the pitching for TCU, they've got multiple guys who come out 6'3", 6'4", throw 94 miles an hour. TCU's a team to watch for sure. They've just got in any other year, they probably would win the conference. But Texas Tech has been kind of on a roll this season. So TCU is nothing to sneeze at. Oklahoma State is another fine program. They just lost to Oklahoma. But as we know, in the football side, that Bedlam series is pretty wild.
It is.
Kind of goes out the window. I think they've had They played in Tulsa this weekend. I think they had about 16,000 a game, so it's a big deal. But Oklahoma State's got a great pitching staff. They got a great offense. That's a top 15 program as well. So TCU, Oklahoma State, and Texas Tech, of course, are the three in the Big 12.
All right, and let's Cliff Notes this. ACC, what do we need to know about the Atlantic Coast Conference baseball?
Virginia is
the defending
great.
National champion.
Absolutely. Virginia, North Carolina State has been good.
Which, here's a crazy thing about NC State.
Love this.
Their head coach there, what is his name? I'm drawing a blank.
Too.
Elliott. His first name is Elliott something. He had to miss their big series at Louisville this past weekend because he and his dog both were bitten by a copperhead snake last week.
The rest of the story, though.
Oh, the rest of the story is that they were bitten by the snake, and Coach Elliott Avant, I think's his name, he killed the snake with an umbrella and packaged it up and took it to the hospital so that they could tell what kind of snake or the venom or whatever. Coach is going to be fine, but he did have to miss that big series in Louisville against Dan McDonald's Louisville Cardinals, and just a crazy, wild story in college baseball. You can't make this stuff up.
It's pretty awesome.
Monty Lee is the head coach of Clemson. I don't think they're doing quite as good as in years past. What else is going on in
Miami? Is a top 5 program as well. They slipped my mind. Florida State has dropped, but that's still a good program. They've been hovering around the top 20 the whole year, so there's depth in the ACC for sure.
All right, so some of the conferences likely Ole Miss is going to be facing off in postseason very, very soon. All right, enough baseball. When we come back, we're going to give you an update on all things college football. This is Hotty Toddy Hotline. Stay with us. And we're back on Hotty Toddy Hotline. John Raw with Matt Heermans, CRM Sports college baseball and football insider, and our legal expert as well. And, Counselor, I have to ask you on this week's show, the football side of things, sadly, are from a legal perspective as the Tunsil Freeze debacle continues with another chapter. And this past week we saw where everybody's lawyered up now, it looks like.
Yes, so you've got two prongs to this this mess. You've got the texts and the payments and things like that have involved the NCAA.
Which Ole Miss claimed this week that those were true, that those were valid?
Well, the investigators have determined that they think those are accurate. Those are real.
Okay,
all right. That's bad news. The other side of it is the stepfather gate, if you want to put it that way, between Laremy Tunsil's stepfather and him being Laremy Tunsil. They want to now depose Hugh Freeze to give some type of testimony on how the interactions have been between the stepfather and Laremy Tunsil.
Why?
Because apparently the Hugh Freeze has some type of inside information on how their relationship was and how they interacted. So Dad's attorney wants to hear from Hugh Freeze, and now Hugh Freeze has an attorney, and they want to limit the deposition to really specific questions because they don't want to touch anything that has to do with Ole Miss football, since this is essentially a plaintiff suit from stepfather to Laremy Tunsil. And at the end of the day, you start thinking, pretty good offensive lineman, wonder if it was worth it at this point.
Well, my question that many probably are asking is, why would the stepfather even step into this? And the natural answer would be money.
The natural answer could be money. However, the stepfather has had issues with Laremy Tunsil before now, of course.
Like criminal issues?
Yes, he's claiming that he's assaulted him on numerous occasions and done other type of physical things to him. And this isn't the first time he's done that. Yeah, I mean, if you want to stretch out the conspiracy, which is not too far-fetched about money, but he's done it 2 years ago, I think. He said that Laremy has beat him up and assaulted him and done these other things to him. So this would be the second time. It just so happens that now Laremy does have some money.
And that's another maybe possible motive to come up with. I mean, we're talking millions and millions of dollars here now, not just to bring down the Ole Miss football program or discredit Tunsil or Freeze or anything else. Money now and lawyers feeding that fire, because nothing – and you tell me this, Counselor, nothing excites a lawyer more than making a lot of money.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's part.
I hear an ambulance coming down the street now.
It's part of it. It's part of it. And the interesting part, though, is typically an assault, something of that nature, is typically going to be something that's prosecuted by a district attorney's office somewhere. It's a criminal offense, and there's no money in it for anybody. However, there are situations where you can sue somebody civilly. You could sue me if I attacked you and broke your glasses, or anybody else, to try to get money and recompensation for injuries and things like that. I'm not sure how they're going to parlay this civil lawsuit over an assault into something that's going to be a huge number on the end of it. I don't know how to do it. I haven't seen the lawsuit, and I don't know what the strategy is, but that's what looks like they're going on. If not that, if there's no money at the end of it, it looks like the stepfather just really, really does not like Laremy Tunsil.
Yeah, and what's also a little bit strange to me is, of course, Tunsil's a native of Florida, like not even like on the Panhandle. He was from, I think, closer toward Jacksonville or somewhere like that. And the family lived in Oxford the last couple of years.
Right.
And these arguments that got cops brought into the equation happened in Lafayette County.
Right.
And so this is a case that it's happening right on the doorstep of Ole Miss. Probably also not a good thing.
Right. It's just another layer. Hugh Freeze is, again, I don't want to go back to it, but Hugh Freeze, your head coach, has got other things to do right now. But right now he's trying to limit this deposition. He's lawyered up, and he's trying to avoid any type of further stain that he could put on the football program, or Mr. Tunsil could try to put on the football program. This is not the kind of thing you want your head coach to be going through in May. You're not that far off. You got summer meetings and things like that going on. You're always recruiting. And honestly, August isn't that far away when you start practicing. So you don't want your head coach dealing with something like this.
And imagine what SEC Media Days is going to be like in less than 2 months, by the way. It happens in early July now. So you got that ahead of you. The only positive thing I've seen come out of the Ole Miss football office in the last few weeks was this past week, Coach Freeze and Wesley Walls, the great tight end for Ole Miss, won the Chick-fil-A coaches tournament over in Riddle's Plantation in Georgia. They've done well in that tournament, but they usually got beat out by Paul Johnson and Georgia Tech, or other teams like Steve Spurrier and Sterling Sharp are a team that do well. But Coach Freeze and Wesley actually won that thing and got some scholarship money for the university as a result of that. That's the only positive thing I've really seen.
Yeah, I'm hard-pressed. I'm thinking as you start to talk about that, start to think about when was the last time we heard good news ever since the gas mask video showed up. Seems like, I mean, it hadn't been that long. It seems like it's been a long time.
It's been a very tough thing. And this is a story and a whole deal that just is going to probably keep having these episodes. And as much as the diehard Ole Miss fans want this to be put behind you, I just don't see it happen, which goes back to what we talked about on this show a couple of weeks ago when this first got out there, that I'm not sure that somebody's head needs to roll, and we still haven't seen that happen. To my knowledge, the coaches that were involved in the text are still on the staff.
Absolutely. No steps have been taken so far. I think on the last Hotty Toddy hotline we talked about, I said, hey, listen, there's no reason to self-impose sanctions or do anything now because it hadn't heated up. It doesn't look like anything has come to fruition as far as fire being behind the smoke. It looks like the fire is starting to seep through the smoke clouds right now. So I imagine within the next month or so you're going to hear maybe about some self-imposed sanctions at this point, maybe about some suspensions or even firings and things like that, because you're going to want to start cutting your losses. You're going to want to start minimizing this thing as much as possible if that NCAA train starts gaining steam, and it looks like it might be doing that right now, unfortunately.
Matt Heermans, y'all. We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll wrap this show up. This is Hotty Toddy Hotline.
Hey, Rebels, your truck is here. Allen Samuels Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram in Oxford presents the all-new Ram Rebel. It's Ram, the Rebel way. Send an unmistakable signal. Rebel 24/7. Ram Rebel from your friend in the car business. Allen Samuels Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram in Oxford.
Come by, let's be friends.
And we're back with the final segment of this week's Hotty Toddy Hotline, our last show before the last show, you could say, as next week will be our last show of 2015-16. John Rawl with Matt Heermans. Matt, thank you once again, sir, for your great expertise on this week's show. Ole Miss is traveling to Bluebell Field down on the College Station, Texas campus of Texas A&M University, and they'll face off against a Texas A&M team that right now is one of the top teams, although Ole Miss and several others, as we said earlier in the show, are chomping at their Aggie heels. This is going to be, once again, like last week against Kentucky, a Thursday through Saturday series, the final series of the year for Ole Miss, SEC-wise, before they head off to Hoover next week for the college baseball tournament over there at the Hoover Met, or Regions Park, I think it's what it's called now. Matt, what does the coach of Texas A&M and his team have to look forward to as they host the Rebels?
Well, they're going to be hosting a very good team. They're going to be hosting a team that's got a great offense. They're going to be hosting a team that's actually been hot recently, 14 runs and then 7 runs. Of course, you have the walk-off home we talked about earlier. But the teams are similar in a lot of ways. A&M does not have a weakness, really. Their pitching staff is absolutely top-notch. I would say that they're not the most powerful team, but they generate runs with the best teams in the country. Ole Miss has probably got a little more pop off the bat when you're talking about the long ball. But Texas A&M just doesn't have any weaknesses. They lost the series, they won the series this weekend here, and they lost the last game. But the reason they lost the last game is because they walked 11 guys, they hit 2 batters, almost self-imposed type of things. It's just a really, really solid program that Rob Childress has there in College Station. And what Ole Miss is going to have to do, first of all, their bats are going to have to be moving. They're going to have to be cranking out some offense because that pitching staff is tough for A&M. But they're going to have to take advantage of any mistakes that Texas A&M makes. They don't make them, but they made some today. South Carolina pounced on them. It's exactly what Ole Miss is going to have to do.
All right, so watch out for Texas A&M, Coach Childress. Maybe the walks will happen once again, and Rebel fans will be happy if they get free passes there on the banks of the Brazos. Well, Matt Heermans, again, thank you. John Rawl, thanking you for listening or watching us on many of our great affiliates across Mississippi. We'll be back here again next week to wrap all the things up. Michael Snowden will hopefully be back in the saddle with us as we bid adieu to this year of a lot of fun and some wackiness as well. So until that time, you have yourself a great red and blue week. Until that time, we'll see you next week. So long. This has been Hotty Toddy Hotline, a production of CRM Sports on the Colonel Reb Network.